Hello, everyone, and welcome to the ninth episode of the Azure SDK Community Stand-Up. In this platform, we are committed to provide you with the freshest updates, valuable insights, and wholesome discussions from the ever-evolving world of Azure development. Today, we have a special guest joining us, and we will be delving into the fascinating subject of using artificial intelligence, in particular for transcribing and translating audio. This topic not only highlights the incredible potential of AI, but also how it is transforming communication in our increasingly connected world. So, like I mentioned, this is our ninth episode. Can't believe 9 months ago we started with this, and we're getting to the end of the year. The topic for today is going to be transcribe and translate using AI. The overview for today is I'm going to go over some of the releases for the Azure SDK team for November, and then we're going to go straight into the topic with our guest Mario Guerra, and then we'll have time for a Q&A. So before we get started, let me talk a little bit about the releases in this month in November. We had Storage Data Lake for Go. Those are stable releases. That's GAs. We have Windows Authentication Broker support for the Azure Identity SDK for .NET, Java, JavaScript, and Python. And then other packages like Connected VMware and Container Service Fleet for Go, Java, JavaScript, and Python, service networking for .NET, Databricks for Go, Application Insights, and Datadog, Custo, and NetApp files. I'm not going to name all of them, but it's in the screen. And for beta releases, we had hardware security models, hybrid network analytics for .NET, recursive service data replication. It's for Go, Java, JavaScript, and Python, and we have other ones that were released this month. Before and since I mentioned those services and in different languages, I always like to start with this slide. This is the Azure SDK PM team, and the PMs that you see in here are in charge of those services. So if you have feedback, or if you have questions, or if you just want to engage with them, you can find them here with their Twitter handle. For example, if you have something about Azure Portal or Python or storage, you can reach out to Rohit on Azure. If you have questions about Cosmos DB or something like that, you can always reach out to with blue hair. His name is Kyle. And then we can go from here. And actually, you might recognize my co-host. His name is Sandeep Sen, and he's here today, co-hosting this. And I'm going to bring it up. Hey, Sandeep.
Hey,
How's it going?
it's good.
It's the ninth episode, and we're going hard with AI. I've been hearing so many things. For example, last week the Beatles released a song, and some AI had to go in there. So there's some magic happening in the world of AI, and I'm really excited about this topic.
Sure. And I think a couple of days ago there was the OpenAI event as well. A
Yeah,
lot
this
of traction there.
earlier this week. You're right. So why don't we just get started and bring in Mario Guerra? Hi,
Hi.
Mario.
Hi, Hector. Hi, Sandeep. Thanks for having me on the show. It's really nice to be here with you today.
Thanks for coming. I've been seeing you playing a little bit with AI, and it's very encouraging to see what you're doing, and especially when you're using a tool for some. You know how they say, right? Like when you're learning something, it's really cool when you use it for something personal, and it pushes you to do things like that. And like I mentioned before, I don't know if you heard this, but the Beatles released the song and they use AI to clean audio and everything. And then I
Oh,
see
yeah.
that you write something about it. I was like, this is the kind of stuff I want to get on board with.
Well, this is not quite as spectacular as the Beatles releasing a new song, but it was pretty cool for my family anyway.
Yeah,
So, should I get into it?
Yeah,
let's
Okay.
let's
get
start
started.
with.
Let me give you a little bit of backstory. So, the whole reason for this is my mother-in-law is Estonian. As a young girl, And if you don't know, Estonia is a country in Northern Europe, shares a border with Russia and the Baltic Sea. During World War II, her and her family had to flee Estonia because of the war, and they spent 2 years walking through Europe before they were able to emigrate to the United States. And so many years later, my mother-in-law recorded a conversation with her parents about the experiences they had. And she did the recording on one of these. And if you haven't seen this, this is an ancient technology once used to record and playback sound, right? And they're actually making a comeback. I don't know why, but regardless. So she made this recording on a little cheap cassette player or tape recorder, sitting on a table likely with just the three of them. So it's a conversation of three people recorded on this tape in Estonian. And so nobody's heard it in the family. And so I thought, I could probably do something about this. So I bought this little cheap tape recorder off Amazon. It cost me $13 at the time. I believe it's $15 now. And it's got a USB audio output. So I hooked this up to my computer, and using Audacity, I was able to convert this audio to a WAV format or WAV. And then I wrote a script that, if we can pull it up on the screen, I actually used AI, an internal version of ChatGPT that we call Chad GPT, to help me write a script that leverages Azure Cognitive Services to first transcribe the audio from Estonian into text, Estonian audio into text, Estonian text, and then translate that text from Estonian into English. And so the script works really well. So I'm using the Azure SDKs, the cognitive services, and the translation text, and I support several languages.
How many? So Estonian is a pretty not obscure, but the number of speakers are pretty less. How many languages do we support?
It is astonishing how many languages are supported. I don't have the number in front of me, but it is significant. I think it's easier to list the number of languages that are not supported than the number of languages that are.
But I can find it in.
Aren't you a Rust developer and you wrote this in Python?
I have more experience with Python than I do in Rust, to be honest with you.
Oh, okay.
Before coming to Microsoft, I'd never touched Rust.
Okay.
I do like Rust. I'm the product manager for Rust, but for this particular purpose, I'm using, because there are SDKs for Python. We don't have SDKs for Rust for this purpose. So multiple reasons, that being probably the main one, just no SDKs for them. But so the script supports several languages, so some of the more common ones, and it basically takes in the audio, and the way it works is it looks for pauses in speech, and then it takes that chunk, sends it off to the cloud where it gets transcribed, and then we get that chunk back, and then it's output to a file. And then later, that file is then passed to the translation service, which is then taking it in and translating it to English. And so the results. Now, I want to stress that the audio quality, like I said, this is from a cassette recorded decades ago of a conversation between three people sitting around a table likely. And then so the audio quality is not great, right? So by extension, the transcription is not great, which means the translation is not great. And that's not really a knock on the translation service. It's just, if you put junk in, you get junk out. Right. So I could probably do some stuff to clean up the audio and get a better result. And I did learn that there's a new Estonian model that I can try, which I will probably go back and try. And I did document all of this in a blog post that Hector and Sandeep can share. And the code for this whole setup is available in that blog post. But so basically, I don't know if you can see it from here, but the translation doesn't make a lot of sense. So to try to clean this up, I decided to use OpenAI. In this case, I had OpenAI take the transcription and build me a narrative around the story. Take the details of the story, translate them to English, and then write me a story that kind of keeps the details. Doesn't have to be a one-to-one translation, but let me identify with what's going on. And so it did that. So I've got let me get back up to the translations. I've got a translation generated by OpenAI that, like I said, is not a word-for-word translation, but it kind of keeps the gist of the story while letting us in the family understand what happened, right? So this is just amazing to me because it unlocks the past. It brings it back to life in a way that we just didn't have the technology to do before, because nobody understood. Like, it's on a cassette, it's on this tape, and it's in Estonian, and only my mother-in-law and her sisters understand it. So in order for the rest of the family to be able to unlock this history and understand it, Azure Cognitive Services have given us that ability. And then pair that with OpenAI to help kind of smooth over the rough edges in the audio translation and transcription, and you've got it's just gold. So
This is
So
this is
it's
very
it's amazing what
interesting.
you can do these days.
This is very interesting because how many generations you can keep an event that it's so important, right? Like something that shaped your family potentially, right? And having this ability to go back and reach into it and get something, you're bringing them alive, right? Like you're bringing them back to life and
Yes.
sharing this. Now your kids are gonna learn what their great grandparents went through and everything. So
Yes.
we were
It's
talking about that
history
bridging in
that we
communication.
keep alive.
Yeah.
And it was a 3-step process then. So first you took the video, the wave, and directly ran it to the transcribe.
Well, I
which
guess
then-
first I transferred the audio using this little tape player. So that was step 0, if you will, is capturing the tape to a digital format. Step 1 was then sending it to or running it through the transcription service that parses the audio and then transcribes those. And then step 2 was translating that transcribed text into English. And then I guess step 3 was taking that transcription and then building a narrative out of it that is understandable to the family.
And this took you like how long approximately to finish?
So like I said, I built the script with the help of the AI chat bot, right? And so the nice thing about these chat bots, it's really like having a second brain, but this got me about 80 to 90% of the way of where I needed to be in just a couple of days. And then, with some cleanup and some debugging and, passing errors back into the chat bot and then looking up some documentation, I was able to get it working. So it didn't take very long. The amazing thing is that the chat bot knew just how to use these SDKs, and I had it build me Pythonic code. Now, granted, this is just a script, right? I wouldn't say that this is a Python software, the best practices or anything like that, but it does the job of what I needed it to do. And that was translate this audio to something that we can understand.
Yeah. And it is also repeatable. So probably you can.
Oh yeah. So let me show you, just for the heck of it, I'll show you this working with a small. So here's some Spanish WAV files. I hope you can hear them.
Esta es una prueba del sistema de transmisión de emergencia. Solo es una prueba. Si esto fuera una emergencia real, estaría corriendo para salvar mi vida.
Are you able to hear that?
That's pretty funny, yes.
Okay, now here's the second one.
En caso de una emergencia real, debes tener suficiente tequila y limones guardados para hacer margaritas.
Okay, so I know Hector understands that. So I'm going to run these WAV files through the translator.
And now Sandeep will understand it.
Sandeep will understand too. So here's the transcribed text. Here's the translated text for the first audio sample.
Yeah.
And here's for the second one.
Okay. And we can pass these texts to OpenAI if we want condensed.
We could.
format.
In this particular case, the audio snippets are so short that it doesn't really make sense to pass it to OpenAI, because what I'm doing in the OpenAI is having it slide through the transcription and take chunks, translate, and then overlap, and then keep adding to the translation. So it's a sliding context window that I developed for a different purpose, but I'm using it here. And so it works really well for long form text or transcriptions. For short stuff like this, you don't need it.
Not only that, but your voice was very paused and very clear and everything. So it was easier for it to do its magic from set
much. Like we have basically broadcast level quality equipment available to us today. Whereas, like I said, my mother-in-law used a cheap tape recorder in the 70s or 80s to record her family sitting around a table. So vast difference in quality in the input audio. It makes
Yeah,
it,
the
it
software
really
that you
affects the
use,
quality of the output.
the software that you were using, you can write in, I mean, you can record in up to 64 channels. You know, it's like take every person is in a different channel in order to do it. So the technology definitely is very different today. But
It is.
yeah.
Oh, and before I forget, I want to mention that, the cost to do this was relatively minimal. So I have a Visual Studio developer subscription, enterprise subscription. So I get $200 in credits every month, or maybe it's $150 in credit. So I use those free credits. This little tape recorder cost me $13. The Audacity software is open source, so it's free 99. I mean, the only time it took me, granted, I did use the bot that I don't pay for because it's running on our developer, our internal subscription. But aside from that cost, it was relatively cheap for me to do this. So it's not super expensive for those of you that already have access to some Azure credits.
Um, and what I just want to, I need to ask this.
All right.
Does all the family know about this already, or are you trying to present this during Thanksgiving or during the holidays and amaze everyone?
They don't all know about this yet. So some of them were here recently and I showed them, but we haven't. So the thing is, my mother-in-law is not 100% happy with the translation. So she thinks that, there's still some tweaking that we can do. So I will probably revisit this at some point, and there will be a part 2 of that blog post that describes, like, I need to clean up the audio. I need to use some of the more updated tooling and use some of the suggestions from our cognitive services teams about how to get the best output from the translation. And I'll try again and see how that goes. So once she's happy, then I'll make sure the rest of the family knows about it.
Well, and the rate of improvement in these services, it's exponential, right? Like every day they're getting better at doing this. So this is amazing.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Can we look at the code as well? Like quick walkthrough of the code and see
the code of the script?
Yes.
Sure. Yeah. So let's see, so this is all the imports where we import the SDKs, argument parsing, setting up the environment variables, the keys and endpoints that I'll need, the language support for the speech service, the speech to text, and then the language codes for the translator. Those are 2 separate services. So the codes are slightly different.
Okay.
One
And
quick question. Why did you put English, Spanish, Estonian, French if you were only focusing in Estonian? Is there any particular reason, or did you just
just so, if somebody wants to take this script and use it as is, then they can take it and there's already support in here for some of the more common languages. It didn't cost me anything extra to add those in. So I went ahead and threw those in. So no special reason other than it was easy to do, and it makes the script more useful for other people.
Right.
Let's see. So then some command line checking, setting of the speech recognition language codes, setting up the speech service. So this is all configuration values. There's a link here.
This is from Azure Cognitive Services Speech SDK, right? And
correct.
Creating a subscription and sending this stuff. Okay,
Correct.
That's pretty straightforward. Can be found on READMEs.
Yes. There's so then the event handler here. So what happens is you define an event handler for when audio pauses are detected, and then that triggers the handler, which will then send the audio slice up to Azure OpenAI to get the to get the language, the response from your translator, right? And then there's some error checking. And then when the session stops, we basically stop
and print out the text.
Right. And then
in place of this, we could also use Azure AI translator as well. Pretty much like there are multiple options for us right here.
There are. I focused on using these because we are the Azure SDK team, and we have Azure SDKs for them, and I wanted to showcase their use for the blog. So it's kind of like a drink 2 beers with 1 stein situation.
Right.
So there are other options. This is just one option that was available to me and straightforward.
So as a JavaScript developer, I can do this same in JavaScript. I don't have to learn Python.
You can do the same thing in JavaScript, .NET, and
Java.
and maybe Go. Are there cognitive services libraries for Go at the moment?
No, but we do have an OpenAI library for Go. So you can, instead of using cognitive, you can use OpenAI.
Okay.
Which there would be a cost differential though.
Right.
But yeah, for Go, we have just OpenAI. But for JavaScript, Java, Python, and .NET, C#, we have everything.
So it's technically, no matter what language you use, if you're using those 4 SDKs, you're expecting the same result and the same process and everything.
Yes, it should be pretty much exactly the same because all of them are talking to the same endpoint, the same service under the hood up in Azure, right? So it's all a matter of packaging it and sending it up there and then getting it back and unpackaging it, right? So how you do that is language specific, but the actual processing handled on the back end is Azure specific and all common for all these SDKs.
Yep.
So we got the text and then we are where were we now? I forgot.
I'm sorry, what was that, Sandeep?
I said, where were we now in the code? I actually forgot where we were.
Oh, this is the section that handles the audio files. So when you pass in audio files, you get the message telling you that it's processing, it gets opened, and then we do a little bit of configuration for the transcriber, and then we start the continuous speech recognition process. So this is the process that's going and looking for pauses and then going through the audio until you hit the designated. So there's a timeout value that was set up above. So once you pass the designated timeout, then it will stop. And then when it stops, then everything gets written to file. And then, yeah, that's it for this. Oh, and then it gets passed to the translator. Yeah, so one thing I need to do is set this up to where the transcription and the translation are handled in different steps, because I believe I would get better output, a better translation. Because right now it's trying to translate in little blocks and chunks. And so again, it's like I said, the audio quality affects this immensely, but I believe there's still ways to get better results just using cognitive services before going to OpenAI. So I do intend to try that, and that'll be probably part 2 of the Audio Alchemy series.
So this is the blog where you can find more information about this one if you want to play with it, if you want to add it into your tools, or if you have a project to work on. And this is the link for some samples, right? Like what other things you can do. There's a bunch of samples to play with these SDKs and with these new technologies to come up with your own idea. You don't have to follow Mario all the time in what he does.
So yeah, this is the root link of all AI related samples we have for cognitive services and Azure OpenAI. Whereas if you're interested in looking at just this code, you can find it in this blog. We'll keep it for a minute so that you can take a screenshot and then find it out. But yeah, you can find the exact code for this, and hope you can experiment more.
It's all up there. So the little Spanish language samples that I played with the emergency broadcast and saving tequila and limes, those are up there. So you can clone the repo. And as long as you have access to cognitive services and the transcriber or transcription and translation services, you can run the demo yourself out of the box.
Cool. I think that brings us to a close in this session here.
Awesome. Well, it's been a lot of fun to talk to you guys. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
No,
Yeah,
thank
and
you
thank you
for let us, yogurt or creative juices, right? Like get all these things. Now I can imagine a couple of things that I would like to do and that I would like to go play. And as usual, when you're not familiar with something, it's like having a sample that it's appealing and able to run it in your machine. It's the first step, right? Like I want to see a sample, run it, I'll play with it. I speak different languages, right? Like so I want to go play with it and maybe find a use for it, right?
Sure.
I love audio production. I love doing all these things. And you know what? Now you made me think about, my parents. Maybe I should talk to them and record them right now. We have better technology. We have better equipment. Maybe I should do it so that way my kids
Do
are,
it. Yeah,
yeah,
do it. The cost is essentially nothing to record them now.
Right.
And you have that for future reference.
yeah.
And so if you have any questions, this goes not just to YouTube, but anybody listening, if you have questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'll do my best to help you out.
Yeah,
This
what is your handle on Twitter, just in case?
It's _ Mario Guerra _
Okay.
with yep.
And also, there's so many ways about how to reach out to us, right? Like, for example, you can go to aka.ms AZSDK releases, which that's where we go more in detail about all the releases that we do for the SDK team. You can give us feedback and contribute. Honestly, I love when people reach out through us. They submit an issue or a PR or something when they reach out to GitHub. It feels more, and I can keep track of what they're asking or something. Follow us on Azure SDK. It's at Azure SDK on Twitter or X. You can find a lot of samples in aka.ms/azai. Find us on Stack Overflow in the collectives /Azure, and you can subscribe and contribute to the blog. This is one of the most amazing tools, right? Like, because we continually try to write blogs about the stuff that we are working on and that we are releasing. And it's amazing to hear it. It amazes me, at least every time that we send something and then I get a response and it's like, have you considered doing that? Or, oh, remember what you told me the other day? I'm doing this, that, and the other. And I want to hear what the people is doing with their SDKs, right? Like how they're using it and making them their own. Because when we're working in it, sometimes we don't realize all these other things that can happen, and it's a beautiful thing.
Maybe we'll should give them a rundown of what each of these channel means. Like if you just want to check releases, you can go and look at releases which are stable, which are
Mhm.
beta, and what things we don't support at all. Whereas feedback, and like if you have a feature request or you wanted to contribute, you can just do it on GitHub. If you especially have a feature request, I think GitHub is the best place to do it, because we focus on GitHub more. Create a issue and we'll definitely reply. We have SLAs tied to GitHub issues. Uh, General feedback, or if you don't like something, follow us or do something on Twitter, just or X now. And for blog, if you want to write a blog with us or you want to follow what are the latest things we are doing, you can do a blog. We do have write-ups on a lot of things on blog. Stack Overflow, I don't have to explain about Stack Overflow, and AI samples are on AZAI, AKMS AZAI. So
It's good that you reminded me to mention that on the releases page, we have all the releases notes and everything, but also we can see a list of retired libraries and along with their replacement libraries at the Azure SDK deprecated and releases, which is something that I think Mario had something to do with. But deprecation list and everything. It's always nice that you can check in there and say, like, why am I getting this error? Is this probably that has something to do, or what replaced that thing that I was using before, and stuff like that. So that's a very key one if you're using our products. All right. Well, I don't know unless you have something else to add. Would you like to say something else, Mario? Do you have something in mind?
I don't. I didn't prepare a kind of an outro, but I just will say that I'm really excited about the possibilities that AI brings to the table. And, I've built some tools for use internally, and some of this stuff will be surfaced externally. And it's just an exciting time to be working at Microsoft. And just once again, thank you for having me on the show and letting me talk about some of the stuff that I did.
Sure. Please go ahead and check out the blog, this blog, look at the code, and try out Azure AI in general.
Make it run in your machine, and if you have
Yes.
problems, I'm sure you're gonna see the author is there. So reach out. It's always great to have feedback. I mean, it's not just because I'm a PM, but in general, I love having feedback, right? Like maybe I missed something, maybe I didn't explain it in one way. So we strongly encourage you guys to reach out. Go to that link, and we'll figure it out. And then for us, at least for myself, for Hector, thank you for following us for 9 episodes, and I'm really happy to be doing this. I'm really happy to be trying to reach out to the community and hear directly with you guys. And as usual, thank you so much, Sandeep, for being part of this, and thank you so much, Mario, for coming this month. It's amazing.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
All right, until next one, I'm gonna say goodbye for now.
See you.
Take care,
Goodbye.
everyone.
All right. Bye.